Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman. We're going to be answering some questions about OCD. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on the next show, please leave it below any of the videos and let's get started. So the first question I have, if you question something happening in the past or you can't really remember if something happened or not, is that automatically a false memory? And if so, how does that make it a false memory? So when you are questioning something happening in the past, that automatically is a false memory. And the reason why it is because with real memories, you don't really question them. You either, and it doesn't give you anxiety. So when you're in the state of anxiety, well, did it happen? Did it not? Let me find out. Let me double check. Let me think about it. Let me try to analyze it. And you're going around and around in that circle, then that means that this is OCD and it's a false memory OCD and you need to move on. And the more you go around trying to figure it out, the worse it's going to get. So at this point, you don't need to figure out if this was a false memory anymore. It is a false memory OCD, but you need to move on because the more you analyze, the worse you're going to get into this. Because people even get obsessed about analyzing, like within the OCD parameter. So the person may be viewing it as OCD, but they're still analyzing the details of that. Well, are you sure it's OCD? Well, let me figure it, in that kind of way as well, right? So not only analyzing the memory itself, but analyzing the process of OCD and stuff like that. So you don't want to get into that. Just try to move on as much as you possibly can, because as you try moving on, your mind will start to disconnect from it and it's going to get easier and easier. In the beginning, it's always the most difficult part. So as much as you possibly can, unplugging from this thought. So your mind goes to this thought, no, this is false memory OCD, I'm choosing to view it as false memory OCD, I'm moving on, I'm choosing to do something else. So you're not getting stuck in it, and it's going to be difficult, but I'm telling you, it works. But you have to do the work, because if you continue to analyze, it's going to continue to float around in your mind and coming back to you with more and more anxiety. So the next question, the person is worried about rituals relating to drinking tea, and the person just has a lot of different rituals related to doing that. And how do you handle that? So, okay, the reality is that you have to stop all of those rituals in order to overcome OCD. There's no way you can continue the rituals and at the same time have stop OCD. It's one and the same, right? So you are going to have to stop all of them. You don't have to stop all of them at once because that would be too difficult to accomplish. So I would say pick a ritual out of all of them. Pick the part that's the least anxiety provoking and start there, and then work your way up. So you're creating that hierarchy that we talk about in CBT, right? Where you're starting with your lowest anxiety provoking compulsion, getting rid of that, then moving on to highest until you can reach all the way to the top and eliminate all of the compulsions. And again, once you stop any compulsion, even the lowest kind of level one, you're gonna get a lot of anxiety. So when the anxiety happens, refusing to pay attention to it. Don't expect the anxiety to not come. It is going to come. But when it does, you don't have to react to it. This is part, your mind is used to doing the rituals, so it's part of it. It thinks of the ritual as you keeping yourself safe, because it learned that the situation is giving you anxiety, therefore the situation is dangerous, because if it wasn't dangerous, why would it give you anxiety? Right? That's how the mind views these things, right? So because it learned this incorrect pattern of thinking, when you start to remove the compulsions, it views it as you being unsafe. So it's going to send you more anxiety and more thoughts at first to get you back to reacting, to get you back to seeking reassurance and protecting yourself and doing compulsions. So don't be afraid of the anxiety coming in. The anxiety will come in as an autopilot mechanism. It will stop by itself. All you have to do is no compulsions, not paying attention, moving on. Just like that all the time, and I promise you it will stop. But you have to start getting rid of these, because every time you're, for example, like this is drinking tea, but it could be anything, it could be about any type of subject. Every time you are doing the compulsion, you're bringing OCD in further. So you're making your situation worse. So, you want to recover, but you're working on actually making yourself worse every time you're doing the compulsion.
So saying, I'm not doing that anymore. Enough is enough. I'm not making myself worse anymore. Whatever it is, I'm not dealing with this. I will have anxiety. I don't care. I'm not going to react, and push through like that. And I promise you it will get easier. But in the beginning, you actually have to push through because it is that difficult. But if you get past that period, it will start to lighten up and be easier. And based on your question, it does seem like you're already ready to move on, but it's just taking that last step and just going for it. And the faster you can eliminate these compulsions, the faster you'll recover. So you can stretch it out, you can make it shorter depending on how much room you have in your life to deal with it. Because this is another thing, is that if you're going to refuse these compulsions and get super anxious, how is that going to affect the rest of your life? Are you able to handle the rest of your life being more anxious? Or do you have to deal with so much already in your life that you just don't have the capacity to deal with this right now? So you have to kind of assess where you stand, or if you don't have much going on right now, then it's best to push through and get it done, get it out of the way, get it done as fast as possible. So next question I have is another comment. Maybe all mental illness has stigma attached, but I wonder if OCD is even more misunderstood. I'm not sure if people would laugh or make fun of depression or schizophrenia, but I do find sometimes people almost make fun of OCD things. Are they just uncomfortable with knowing what to say or do? I don't think they're uncomfortable. I think they just don't know about it. So I think that most people who don't have OCD genuinely think that OCD is a very lighthearted thing, that it's not really a disorder, that it's about organizing and cleaning and things like that, and that people are not really suffering who have it. It's more of like a thing that they do. So I just think that they're misinformed. I don't think it has anything to do with anything else. And that's the reason why they make fun of it. Because if any person would see how painful OCD is, how much damage it causes, not just to the person, but to the families and just really everybody around the person, as well as the person, it wouldn't be so funny or lighthearted. Because I think it's probably one of the worst things you can have, in terms of mental disorders. The only good thing that I can see on OCD compared to other mental disorders is when people recover. The recovery is when they start to do the right things. The recovery is actually very fast, and the person can snap back to their regular life right away. And I'm not sure, but I don't think you can do that with schizophrenia, or well, definitely not with schizophrenia, but with depression. It's more of extended process than with OCD. So that's the kind of the only good part that of having OCD versus having another mental illness. But you know, I would just my best advice about these kinds of things is just view people who make fun of OCD as misinformed, as uninformed, and don't take it personally. So next question I have is one thing that I have noticed and wondered if this is not a way of obtaining reassurance. I try not to do this now, but previously I have confessed something silly to my husband, which I'm sure is OCD thought. And then when he reacts and seems to almost scold me for being so foolish, or else gets angry for me being saying something so silly, then I feel better, and then OCD thought ends. Is it like it's like I want to be punished for the thought and then feel better? Is this also a common part of OCD? I don't think you want to be punished for the thought. I think that you want to seek reassurance, and no matter if you are going to be kind of not really being punished, but if the person won't react that well, right? It doesn't really matter because the pull to seek reassurance is so strong. In terms of your husband reacting this way, yeah, this is pretty much normal reaction that I see from family members, because after a while, family members get really annoyed with the person who has OCD if they're asking them questions all the time, because they understand clearly that these are all OCD thoughts. There's no doubt in their mind about it, right? So when they hear you being so upset, it brings up two things for them. First, it brings up the thing that, well, what is, like, they feel almost on some level helpless because they don't understand how something this silly can bother you, you know? And on the other side, they feel scared that something this silly bothers you, you know? Also, depending on the content of your thoughts and what you're asking, sometimes it can offend them as well. But that sometimes is the case, sometimes it's not. It just depends on an OCD thought. For example, if you have cheating OCD, where you are constantly questioning if your husband is cheating on you, I'm just saying, like, as an example, right? um, then that would definitely offend him, right? Or if you have OCD about other people doing something wrong, or you're trying to pull people into doing rituals with you or for you, or so these kinds of things can offend the other person as well. So, and really, I mean, it's good that you stop doing that, because it really is so detrimental to relationships, when people start to ask the partner. And it's always so easy to ask the partner because they're always right there, right? But the more you ask, the worse the relationship becomes, and it just develops problems. So it's a good idea that you're not doing that anymore.
So next question I have is, one frustrating thing I find is that you can never reason with the voice in your head, because whatever you do, it's still just a thought. So it can have one thought, see, there's nothing to worry about, and then the next second there's the thought, oh, but maybe there was. So I end up in a trap where the rational thoughts are battling with the non-rational thoughts. So there's no voice or thought to listen to that is true you. There's just thoughts talking to themselves, or there's nothing. So my question is, do you just have to get to a place where this nothing is you and just let the thoughts play out? It feels strange though that the real you is just nothing or empty space. So let's go over the thoughts again. So the first thought comes in, what if there is something wrong in whatever way, right? That's the OCD thought trigger, however you want to call it. That's not you. That's not real you. That's just on autopilot. Your mind is sending you these thoughts because you reacted to it before. So now you are responding, no, there's nothing to worry about here. That's real you. You're trying to argue with that automatic part of the mind that's sending you the thought. Of course, that's not going to bring you anything because that part of the mind doesn't understand. So it ends up saying, like, that part of the mind sends you another thought. Well, what if there is? Again, that's autopilot, the thought coming to you. And again, you respond, no, I'm not reacting. So the responses are you, and the thoughts coming into your mind are coming in because you've been reacting. So the more you respond, the more your mind will react and give you more thoughts. So you are not nothing witnessing these two kind of battle each other. You are the responder. So any response you make to the OCD thought is you, and you want to make sure that you're coming from a position of power. So it's not even what you say that's important, but how you say it in your mind, how you think about it. So you can say, I don't think there's anything to worry about, like in a feared kind of way, or you can say, no, there's nothing to worry about. This way, OCD thought again, I'm done with this, from a position of power. So you can respond in a different way. You can control, and that's how you know the response is the real you, because you can control the response. Yes, it's hard, and yes, it is kind of almost on autopilot now as well, because you've been doing the same thing for so long, right? But when I say you, I don't mean like specifically you. I mean people who have OCD in general. But still, you can stop the response. You can't really stop the thought coming into your mind because it just comes in, right? It will stop on its own once you stop the response. But yeah, no, you're not nothing watching the thought. You are the responder. So I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, just ask me again to clarify, and then I'll clarify in the next show. So this question is, I have been hearing your channel 1 year ago, and I know that we need to pay no attention to the OCD thoughts. But I'm having a hard time with disregarding and not paying attention. The more I want to ignore, the more OCD kicks in. Please give some advice. So, when you are disregarding the thought, the more you disregard, the more your mind thinks you are in a dangerous situation. Because your mind has learned from before that this situation is important because you continuously paid attention to it for a long time. So now that you suddenly abruptly stop paying attention to it, it views it as a dangerous situation that you're putting yourself in. So it tries to send you more thoughts. So the less, just like you said, the less you pay attention, the more thoughts you're going to get at first. This is not going to last forever, but before your mind actually makes the switch, it wants to make sure that you are safe. So you need to stay strong and keep going with this way. You need to show it that this is the new pattern for it to kind of cement itself in. And then once it does, then it's going to be a lot easier because your mind right now is working against you to get you back to reacting. After a while, it will start working with you. But right now, it's working against you. So just power through, no matter if it's sending you more thoughts. Actually, your mind sending you more thoughts is a sign of progress, because that means your mind is uncomfortable. That means your mind is seeing that you're doing something different. Do you know what I mean? If your mind wasn't seeing that you were doing something different, then, what are you really accomplishing? But your mind is seeing that you're not following the old way of doing things, and it's uncomfortable, and that's why it's sending you thoughts. I promise you it will stop. But see, the thing is, if you don't do it really good right now, like if you don't go through the recovery really well in this first part and be very strong, that part can last a long time. Because if you're going to start at this moment saying, yeah, I pay attention to the thought, and not paying attention and paying attention again, you're confusing your mind further. So this initial period where your mind is really sending you a lot of thoughts can last for a long time, because you're not really showing it a clear way of how you want to handle things from now on. You're going back and forth. So, and this is a very tough part that I find about OCD, is that you're expected to be the strongest when you are at your weakest in the beginning. But this is what really needs to be done to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be a very clear message. And that's what I say, 80%, 90%. So you allow yourself that 10 to 20% fail rate, which happens to everybody. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just allow it to happen, but at the same time try to minimize it as much as possible, because if you start to beat yourself up about it, then you start to become more negative about the whole thing, right? So stay positive. Those fails will happen. They don't really matter if they are at 10% or 20% and the rest you're doing really well. But if you're doing 50-50, you're not teaching your mind anything, so you're not really recovering. You're going back and forth. I mean, I guess you are recovering a little bit, but it's just a very, very slow process. So you want to have a higher ratio there. So the next question that I have is, hi Ali, please help me. I'm having symptoms of depersonalization and derealization, and I'm very scared. First I thought it was just my OCD, but I googled the symptoms and most of them apply. So what should I do? Please help me. I'm also afraid that the disorder is going to make me act on my harm intrusive thoughts. Okay, so do you see what you did wrong here? You Googled the symptoms. Never Google. Never Google. It's not a good thing to do, because the more you search, the more you try to figure things out, the more confusing it gets. And a lot of the symptoms between mental illnesses are pretty similar. So you can, anybody can fall under those symptoms as well, So it's just not doing it. Now that you've already done it, you have to view it as exposure. So you're seeing all of these things that are going through your mind of what if this, what if that, and saying, no, this is silly, this is my OCD playing tricks on me again, I'm not going to pay attention. So not reacting. And so far, and I don't want to give you kind of reassurance on this, but so far not one person has ever acted on their harm OCD thoughts. Not one in the world. So there is no reality to this situation. So, but the more you pay attention to these things, the more you do the Googling and searching, the worse you're going to feel. So, and this goes for anybody who has this compulsion of looking things up online. Don't do it, because that just gets you in deeper, and it never helps. It never helps, because there's no actual real problem. If you had a real problem, you would know it. It wouldn't be a question that is an OCD question. It wouldn't be, well, what if? Well, let me try to figure it out. It gives me a lot of anxiety. The thought comes back to me over and over again. All of these signs that it's OCD. So just disregarding, moving on, and you will see that it will start to go away. But the more you pay attention to it, the more real it will seem. So another question I had is about religious OCD and following compulsions when you're praying, and how to go about stopping. Do you have to? If the person's asking, do I have to inform God that I'm stopping? How do I stop all of them? You know, and all of this kind of stuff. So you can't recover until you stop all of the compulsions. So with praying, it's very common to with religious OCD, it's very common to have compulsions. So. The best you can, start out small, the ones that bother you the least, the ones that you feel less attached to, stop those and then work your way up. And no, God doesn't need to have you tell him or her, however you view it, right, that you're stopping. God already knows it. You don't need to say anything. Feeling like you need to say something is an OCD thought. It's a way of seeking reassurance. Like, yeah, okay, I'll stop the compulsions, but if I let God know first, then I'll feel better and then the anxiety won't be as high. Don't be afraid of the anxiety being high. It will go away. The anxiety needs to go up for your brain to change how it's reacting. If the anxiety is not going up, that means you're not even changing your mind, because your mind is very comfortable. If your mind is comfortable, it's not going to send you anything different than what it's already been sending you. You want your mind to be extra uncomfortable and to see that you're not reacting anymore. Just like I talked about in the previous question, it has to be uncomfortable in order for it to change. If you cannot simply cut out the compulsion, try to reduce the amount of time you spend doing the compulsion. So say if it's say a prayer that you repeat it less times, or if you do something, say some words or whatever, then do it a less amount of time. So you're reducing that, or do it every other prayer. So you're slowly getting away from doing it all the time. It's kind of like you're rebelling against your OCD, but you're rebelling slowly. And religious OCD, I mean, I talk to so many people who have religious OCD. It has nothing to do with actual religion or God or anything like that. This is just OCD manifesting itself with what you care about most, which happens to be religion. If that ever changed, it would manifest itself in a different way. What else do you care about most? So it's not attached to that, and it definitely has nothing to do with your belief system or with the higher power. I talk to people across all religions, and everybody suffers the same way when it comes to religious OCD. So don't allow yourself to think that these compulsions or these obsessions or avoidances have anything to do with religion and God. They just have to do with anxiety and OCD that happen to be at this point in time about the religious topic. It's absolute. There's no deeper level here. Your mind is just being triggered because you've been paying attention to these thoughts. Absolutely zero to do with God or anything else. But as long as you keep doing the compulsions, these thoughts are going to come in over and over and over again and will try to get you to react. So not reacting, coming from a position of power, no. And you can say this, that no, God already knows. God is the higher power. God already knows what's in my heart, what I mean to say, all of this stuff. I don't need to explain anything to God. All I have to do is choose not to react. And going about it like that. And the more you go about it like that, the more you will see that it's working and that you're actually feeling better. Because you should be praying how you want to pray, not how OCD makes you pray. What does OCD have to do with God or religion, right? So not allowing it to take over and control how you're praying. So you're praying how you want to pray. OCD can tell you it's wrong. OCD can tell you you're going against God. OCD can tell you, you're gonna ruin your faith or whatever. Doesn't matter. This is all OCD. You're not paying attention. You're moving on. When you're going strong about it like this, it can't get you. So just choosing that path. Another question I had a few more, but I don't have enough time in today's show to answer, so I'll answer in the next show. But the one last question I wanted to get in here is stopping the compulsive behavior, because it's the same thing that we talked about last time in the last question. That if you have any compulsive behavior that you would like to stop, Start out with the least bothersome compulsion, so the one that you can most easily get rid of. It might not even be anything big, it might not make a big difference in terms of the overall daily situation, but it will start this process, okay? So get rid of that for a few days, see how you're doing, then add one more, then add one more, and keep getting rid of them. If you can't make any progress, you can't get rid of it at all, at least delay it. So I'm not going to do this right now, this compulsion. I'm going to do it, say, an hour from now, or like I said, like in the last question, in case of praying or something like that, right? I'm not going to pray like this right now. Maybe the next time I pray, I'll pray how OCD wants me to pray. And the next time you pray, again, delay it to the next time. If you're doing hand washing, right? I wash my hands, say, 50 times a day. Well, can you wash your hands 40 times a day instead of 50? And then from 40 going to 30, and from 30 going to 20, right? So you're slowly cutting it down. If you just, say, for example, wash your hands for a long period of time, so it might be not a lot of times, but for a very long period of time, then reducing rather the amount of time that you're washing your hands. So from whatever, say 10 minutes to 8 minutes to 7 minutes to. So you're constantly, by taking these little steps, reducing the amount of compulsions, reducing the amount of OCD. And the more you do this, the more you will start to feel better and the faster you'll recover, because you need to overcome these compulsions in order for OCD to go away. You can't both keep the compulsions and get rid of OCD, right? So it's just slowly doing it, but you want to make sure that every day you're working on it and every day you're making progress. And most important is always coming from a position of power. Always. So this was the last question of today's show. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Also visit youhaveocd.com. There's private recovery program there with me. There's ebooks, there's articles, there's all kinds of information to help you recover, as well as on this channel there's a lot of information. Also, my books are available on this channel as well, and they're available for rent rather than to buy. They're audiobooks, which is a lot cheaper. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want to get the information, you can do it through this channel as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.